She walked into the Billionaires' shooting range with an old pistol and a quiet confidence. But when the bullets flew, the rich men learned the hard way. Never underestimate a woman who's spent a lifetime hitting her mark. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The Summit Elite Range was not a place for ordinary people. Nestled in the rolling hills outside the city, its membership fees alone cost more than what most Americans made in a year. The parking lot resembled a luxury car showroom, Bentleys, Maseratis, and Lamborghinis gleaming in the morning sun, their wealthy owners inside practicing their marksmanship with custom-made firearms that cost as much as college tuition. On this particular Saturday morning, the regulars were engaged in their weekly competition. Maxwell Reynolds, tech billionaire and majority owner of the range, was holding court near the central shooting station. Around him stood his usual circle, venture, capitalists, hedge fund managers, and real estate tycoons, all dressed in tactical gear that had never seen actual tactical situations. Their laughter echoed across the range as they compared their custom weapons and traded stories about business conquests. The sudden appearance of an older Honda Civic in the parking lot drew confused stares. When Sarah Bennett stepped out, middle-aged woman in worn jeans, a simple flannel shirt, and carrying what appeared to be an old leather case, the confusion turned to amusement. She walked with quiet confidence toward the entrance, ignoring the stares and whispers. "I believe you're lost, ma'am," called the attendant at the door, a former military man who now served the whims of the wealthy. "This is a private facility." Sarah smiled politely. "I have a day pass. My nephew works in maintenance here. It's my birthday present." She produced a laminated card from her pocket. The attendant examined it with obvious skepticism, but couldn't find any reason to turn her away. He reluctantly stepped aside, allowing her to enter the pristine facility, much to the increasing amusement of the regular members. Inside, the range was even more impressive than its exterior suggested. Climate-controlled shooting stations with digital targeting systems stretched in both directions. The central area featured a specialized competitive range where Maxwell and his friends were preparing for their contest. "Well, well," Maxwell said loudly as Sarah approached the counter to rent equipment. "Looks like we have a special guest today." His perfect white teeth gleamed as he smiled, but the warmth didn't reach his eyes. "Come to learn how to protect yourself, ma'am?" Sarah merely nodded politely as she filled out the necessary forms. The clerk behind the counter exchanged knowing glances with Maxwell's group. "You know, we're about to start our weekly competition," Maxwell continued, stepping closer. $5,000 buy-in, winner takes all. Perhaps you'd like to join us?" This elicited chuckles from his entourage. "That's very kind," Sarah replied softly. "I think I might, actually." She opened her worn leather case, revealing an old but well-maintained pistol. Nothing fancy, no custom grips or specialized sights, just a standard model that had clearly been used for years. The laughter grew louder. James Harrington, a hedge fund manager worth billions, slapped Maxwell on the back. "Max, I think we should waive the fee for our guest. Call it a community service." More laughter followed. Sarah said nothing as she loaded her ammunition with practiced ease. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone who had performed these actions thousands of times before. "Let's give her some pointers, shall we?" Maxwell announced to his friends. "After all, we want everyone to feel welcome here." The competition was simple. 10 shots at targets of increasing difficulty and distance. Precision and speed both counted in the final score. Maxwell went first, impressing everyone with his expensive custom Beretta and scoring an admirable 86 out of 100 possible points. His friends followed, each trying to outdo the others, their scores ranging from respectable to excellent. Throughout their turns, they continued making comments just loud enough for Sarah to hear. "Better pay attention, honey. You might learn something." That grip looks like it cost more than her car. Maybe we should set up some closer targets for her turn. When it was finally Sarah's turn, she stepped up to the line without fanfare. The rangemaster explained the rules to her as if speaking to a child, pointing out each target and its corresponding point value. "I understand," she said simply, loading her pistol with 10 rounds. Maxwell leaned in to whisper to his friends, "This should be entertaining at least." The room fell silent as Sarah took her stance. There was something different about her posture. Now, a subtle shift that the more observant among the group noticed immediately. She held the pistol with natural extension of her arm, her feet positioned perfectly. Her first shot cracked through the air, hitting the dead center of the farthest target, the most difficult one worth 15 points. Without pausing for reaction, she fired again, and again, and again. Each shot found its mark with unerring precision, hitting center mass or designated headshots on the tactical targets. The smiles faded from the billionaires' faces. Maxwell's confident smirk transformed into an expression of disbelief. Sarah fired her 10 shots in a controlled, rhythmic sequence that spoke of years of disciplined practice. When she finished, the range was completely silent. The rangemaster cleared his throat. "Perfect score. 100 out of 100, and..." He checked the electronic timer. 3 seconds faster than our previous range record. Sarah safed her weapon and placed it down, turning to face the stunned group. The silence stretched uncomfortably until one of the younger billionaires in the back asked, "Who are you?" 22 years with the FBI's hostage rescue team," Sarah said quietly. "Before that, 10 years as a competitive shooter. I retired last year." Maxwell's face flushed red. "Why didn't you say something?" Sarah smiled, a genuine smile this time. "You didn't ask, you assumed." An older man in the back of the group stepped forward, his expression showing recognition. "You're Sarah Bennett. You were lead tactical trainer for the FBI's Executive Protection Unit." She nodded once, neither confirming nor denying. She protected 3 presidents, the man continued, addressing the group. "And she holds the record for the highest qualification score in FBI history." Maxwell attempted to recover, extending his hand. "Well, this is unexpected. Congratulations on your win, Ms. Bennett." "Agent Bennett," she corrected gently, accepting his handshake. "And I don't need the prize money. I suggest donating it to the Fallen Officers Fund." As Sarah meticulously packed her modest equipment into the worn leather case, the atmosphere in the Summit Elite Range had undergone a profound transformation. The electric air of mockery and superiority that had permeated the space just 30 minutes earlier had dissipated, replaced by a heavy silence broken only by hushed whispers. The billionaires' expressions displayed various stages of embarrassment, respect, and thoughtful reconsideration as they processed what they had just witnessed. Their designer tactical gear and custom weapons now seemed more like costume pieces than tools of expertise. The rangemaster, a retired Marine who had seen his share of skilled shooters, approached Sarah first. His earlier condescending manner had vanished entirely as he extended his hand with genuine respect. "Agent Bennett, it's a genuine honor," he said in a low voice. "I served with Jenkins in the Corps before he joined the Bureau." He mentioned training with someone named Bennett, but I never made the connection. "Your reputation precedes you in certain circles." Sarah smiled warmly at him, accepting the handshake with genuine appreciation. "Jenkins was a good man, one of the best I trained. How is he these days?" "Retired in Montana. Still shoots better than most active duty folks," the rangemaster replied with a small smile. "Would you mind if I told him you were here? He'd never believe it otherwise." "Not at all," Sarah replied, zipping up her case. "Tell him Sarah B. says the coffee's on him next time." As this exchange occurred, the billionaires stood awkwardly in small clusters, their usual confidence shattered by the unexpected demonstration of true expertise. James Harrington, The hedge fund manager who had suggested waiving Sarah's fee as community service, was the first of the wealthy patrons to approach her, his Italian leather shoes squeaking slightly on the polished concrete floor. "Agent Bennett," he began, his voice modulated to convey respect while maintaining his dignity. "That was extraordinary marksmanship. I've been shooting for 15 years and I've never seen anything quite like it." He paused, clearly uncomfortable with what he was about to say next. "I believe I owe you an apology for my earlier comments. They were unwarranted and, frankly, unprofessional." Sarah observed him for a moment, noting the genuine contrition in his expression. "Apology accepted, Mr. Harrington. We all make assumptions. The question is whether we learn from them." One by one, the other members of Maxwell's exclusive circle approached with similar sentiments. Awkward apologies poorly disguised as congratulations and praise. Some were sincere, others were clearly performing for their peers, unable to fully shed their armor of privilege even in the face of such a humbling experience. Sarah received each interaction with the same equanimity she had shown throughout the entire encounter, neither seeking their approval nor holding their earlier behavior against them. Alexandra Winters, one of only 2 women in the Billionaire group and CEO of a biotech empire, hung back until most of the men had spoken their piece. When she finally approached Sarah, her expression was different from the others, less apologetic and more contemplative. "They don't know what to do with women who surprise them," she said quietly, standing beside Sarah. "Especially women who outperform them without the benefit of their advantages." Sarah glanced at her curiously. "And you do?" Alexandra's lips curved into a rueful smile. "I've spent 20 years in boardrooms being underestimated, but I've never handled it with the grace you just displayed." She reached into her designer jacket and pulled out a business card. "If you ever decide you want to do more than give shooting lessons, call me. I could use someone with your perspective on my security team." Sarah accepted the card with a nod but made no promises. She had endured enough corporate politics during her government career to know she had little appetite for more, regardless of the salary. As she closed her case and prepared to leave, Maxwell Reynolds himself intercepted her path to the exit. The tech billionaire's face showed a complex mixture of emotions. Embarrassment certainly predominated, but there was also a glimmer of something Sarah recognized from her years reading people in high-pressure situations: genuine introspection. "Agent Bennett," he began, his usual booming confidence replaced by a modulated tone. "Wait, please! We were hoping you might consider giving us some pointers. We would compensate you generously, of course." Sarah paused, studying him for a moment. The man before her controlled billions in assets, had the ear of senators and industry titans, and yet in this moment, he seemed smaller somehow, more human than the caricature of wealth and privilege he had projected earlier. "You know, Mr. Reynolds, the most important lesson I learned in my 22-year career wasn't about shooting technique or tactical positioning," she said, her voice carrying in the now quiet range. "What was it then?" he asked, his curiosity appearing genuine for perhaps the first time in their interaction. "Never judge someone's capabilities by their appearance or their possessions," she replied, her gaze steady. "The best shooter I ever knew used a service weapon he'd had for 15 years and drove a car much older than mine. He could outshoot any operator with a custom rig because he understood that mastery comes from the relationship between the person and their tool, not from the expense or novelty of the equipment." Maxwell nodded slowly, processing her words. His eyes drifted to his own custom Beretta with its mother-of-pearl grips and gold-inlaid barrel, a beautiful piece of craftsmanship that suddenly seemed more like an ornament than a functional tool. "I've spent most of my life believing that the best of anything could be purchased," he admitted, his voice lowered so only Sarah could hear. "It's a difficult habit to break when it proves true in so many circumstances." "Not in the ones that matter most," Sarah replied simply. Maxwell considered this for a moment before asking, Would you be willing to teach us, not just shooting techniques, but the mindset you bring to it? There was a vulnerability in the question. That struck Sarah as genuine, the rare sound of a powerful man acknowledging he had something important to learn. "I'm here every Saturday," Sarah continued, adjusting the strap of her case on her shoulder. "My nephew really did get me this pass. As a birthday gift, he works maintenance here on weekends to help pay for college." She allowed a small smile. "If you're interested in actual training rather than showing off, I'd be happy to help. No charge." Maxwell's eyebrows rose in surprise. "No charge? But your expertise has already been paid for by American taxpayers for over 2 decades. Sarah finished for him. "I didn't serve for the money, Mr. Reynolds. I don't need to profit from sharing what I know now." As Sarah finally made her way to the exit, the weight of dozens of eyes followed her progress, no longer dismissive, no longer mocking, but filled with a new awareness. The Honda Civic that had seemed so out of place among the luxury vehicles now carried a different significance as she placed her case carefully in the trunk. Through the large glass windows of the range, Sarah could see Maxwell engaged in an intense conversation with the facility manager, gesturing emphatically. Though she couldn't hear their words, the manager's repeated nodding suggested changes were already being implemented. Later, she would learn that Maxwell had instructed him to update their membership policy, creating a special category for veterans and former law enforcement officers at a fraction of the regular cost. The following Saturday arrived with a clear sky and cool morning air. Sarah arrived at the Summit Elite Range 15 minutes before her usual time, half expecting to find the experience of the previous weekend forgotten. The wealthy members returned to their regular patterns of exclusivity and performance. Instead, she found Maxwell and 3 others, James Harrington, Alexandra Winters, and an older man she recognized as a retired tech pioneer, waiting by the entrance. Their expensive tactical gear had been replaced with practical clothing suitable for serious training. Their custom weapons were nowhere to be seen. Instead, standard model pistols sat in basic holsters at their sides. "We took the liberty of arriving early," Maxwell explained, a new humility evident in his manner. "We thought you might appreciate students who take the lesson seriously enough to prepare properly." Sarah nodded her approval as she led them into the facility. When they reached the range floor, she was surprised to find it reserved exclusively for their use, a generous gesture from people used to private access, but also a sign they wished to learn without an audience. As Sarah demonstrated the proper stance, feet positioned for stability, arms extended naturally, grip firm but not tense, she noticed how intently they watched her movements, studying every detail with the focused attention of students who had finally found a true master worth learning from. "Today, we start with the fundamentals," she explained, her voice carrying the same quiet authority that had guided FBI recruits and veteran agents alike. "Not because they're basic, but because they're essential. The most complex techniques are built on perfect execution of these core principles. And as Maxwell Reynolds, a man accustomed to disrupting industries and commanding boardrooms, concentrated with uncharacteristic patience on the proper trigger discipline as taught by a civil servant in a flannel shirt, Sarah Bennett realized that perhaps she had found an unexpected purpose for her retirement years, teaching those with everything that the most valuable skills couldn't be bought, only earned through humility, practice, and respect for the fundamentals. In the months that followed, Sarah's Saturday sessions became legendary among the Summit Elite membership. What began as curiosity evolved into genuine appreciation for her methodology and expertise. The waiting list to join her classes grew, and the range's culture underwent a subtle but significant shift, one where skill and discipline earned more respect than expensive equipment or social status. And the woman who had once been mocked now found herself surrounded by students eager to learn not just how to shoot, but how to approach life with the same quiet confidence that had left billionaires speechless.